Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Denver Startup Week as we round up day number 4 for the week if you started on Monday with some of our community events. So awesome to see everyone here. As the day has gotten longer, the content has only gotten better. And we're going to end with what our stage here on the Ignite stage today with the best session that we've had all day. And it's really a discussion about the future of aerospace and really understanding beyond the speed of sound how boom is advancing the supersonic future in the world. To moderate our discussion today, for those of you who don't know about boom, Kristen is going to do a spectacular job. But Kristen Russell joins us as a former president of Aero Electronics and a seasoned executive here in the state of Colorado. Kristen's a global executive who's driven companies to innovate, transform, and grow by delivering visionary and market-driven results throughout her career. And she started at Sun Microsystems. She spent a time and was appointed by Governor John Hickenlooper to be the Chief Information Officer for the state of Colorado. And she spent almost the last 8 years as the president of Aero Electronics. She's an incredible executive. She's a gift to Colorado, and she's going to narrate and discuss this awesome discussion with Blake about what Boom Aerospace is doing here in Colorado and how the future of aerospace is sitting right here in our state. Kristen Russell.
Thank you, Eric. It's great to see you guys. This is going to be the best session. Hold on to your seats. Are there seat belts underneath the chairs? Because strap in. This is an incredible story that is happening right here. So I'm super, super excited about the discussion. We're also, Blake and I have decided that we're going to open up the Q&A to all of you. So I'll ask a couple questions, and then we'd love to turn it over to your curious minds to ask whatever questions you have. So with that, we're going to start with a quick video, and then we're going to get into some of the content with Blake. Go ahead. If you want to.
Test, okay. So what you're seeing here is building of the XB1 and a cool pop-up. Building of the XB1 supersonic demonstrator. This took place not too far from here. We're basically right at Centennial Airport, like half an hour south of here. And this is history's first independently developed supersonic jet. This is the only, is now the world's only operational non-military supersonic jet. And this is, it is the 1/3 scale prototype for the Overture supersonic airliner that I hope all of us will get to fly on in the not too distant future. And so it's about the size of a fighter jet, but it's got airliner technology on it. And after way too many years working on this, we flew it for the first time in March. And so that's what this video is about, first flight. And since then, we've actually flown it 3 times. And if the weather's good tomorrow, it's going to become 4. So, yeah. So one of the surprising things about what we're doing about this airplane is we actually didn't invent anything. We are borrowing from 50 years of progress since the last supersonic airliner, Concorde, was developed. Basically building now off of 20-year-old 787 level technology. So this airplane is made out of 787 materials, kind of old military engines, but it's got our aerodynamics, our design, our augmented reality system for landing. I like to joke it's maybe the first practical world application of augmented reality. And it is successful. So this is, I will never forget that moment, having worked on it for nearly a decade, and we almost didn't get there in so many different ways. And I don't know if I would have believed it if I hadn't been standing right there and just listening to those jet engines purr. And then I didn't breathe for about 12 minutes. That's how long first flight was. And there she is. And there's some real heroes that pulled this off. That airplane was built by a team of about 50 people, including the technicians and the pilots and the leadership. So anyhow, that's XB1.
That's amazing. Round of applause. This is So I was doing some research on you last night. Not that I'm a stalker, but I was. And it turns out Blake's actually really cool. And he has a really cool job. So I tried to do research like, okay, what do we have in common? Because then I could be cool like Blake, right? So we have a ton in common. Actually, there's only 3 things we have in common. So 1, we live in Denver. I thought that was good. 2, you grew up with a fascination around Cessnas as a child, so did I. And 3, we both love physics. And but that's where our paths kind of diverged, because one little known secret about Blake is that he graduated from Carnegie Mellon in 3 years, and at the ripe age of 20. I quickly changed my physics major to international studies. It got really, really hard. And so that's where our paths diverged. But I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you have the vision to start this company in 2014? And how has that vision evolved over the last 10 years, or has it?
Yeah, well, you have one other thing in common.
What's that?
Which is, so my dad was an electrical engineer. Oh. And so I grew up with him doing projects out of an Alera Electronics catalog.
Okay,
so,
there you go. There you go. Okay, that's good. That's good.
Well.
That's awesome.
But yes, yeah, so a bit of my story. I've loved airplanes since basically as long as I can remember. I remember being jealous of a friend in high school who got to take flying lessons. But I never really thought of having a career in aviation. I think because I wanted to work on what was new and better. And, the Cessnas that we got to watch were like, how many decades old? Yeah. And, the invention when I was a kid was happening, on the internet. And so I went to school for computer science. I was, in 2000, summer 2000, I was one of those overpaid tech interns in the Bay Area. And I was living one exit down Highway 101 from the San Carlos airport. And I was like, wait a minute, I could get flying lessons. And so I started taking flying lessons when I was an intern at, 24 years ago. Meanwhile, I kind of had my first career in tech. I was lucky to go to Amazon right before the dot-com bubble burst and there was a hiring freeze. Like I might have gotten like the last job offer. And so I went to Amazon, and the stock was like cratering. But I was really lucky to work with just some amazing people, and I got to work on stuff that Jeff cared about when I was in my early 20s. And so I had like incredible people telling me what I was fucking up. Yeah. Can I say that here?
Yeah, you can.
Here, right?
You can.
The rule of boom is no fucking swearing.
You totally can.
Meanwhile, I finally finished my pilot's license, and I worked at another tech startup in Seattle. I remember going to the Seattle Museum of Flight in, I think, 2007, which was where one of the Concords kind of went out, it put out to pasture. And I remember thinking, like, why is the most amazing airliner ever made in a museum, not in the airports or at the sky? And I around that time, I think I set a lifetime goal of flying Supersonic. And I put a Google alert on Supersonic Jet. And my thought was, well, I just want to be first to know when I can buy a ticket. Yeah. And nearly a decade went by, and it was like crickets. Like there was no credible effort to pick up where Concorde had left off and to build something better. There'd been some talk of supersonic private jets, and it's like, great. Like I don't think I see myself having the money for that. Meanwhile, I'd founded my first company that was, so I'd done e-commerce on Amazon, and I'd been at this what turned out to be the first iFund company backed by Kleiner. And so I thought, okay, I know e-commerce, I know mobile, so I should work on what I know. I should work on mobile e-commerce. And so I started a company that was, we did everything fashionable. Like we built like a barcode scanning game that was like Foursquare plus Red Laser, if anybody remembers that stuff. And it's just like, if you make a list of the most important thing in the world to the least important, like I think barcode scanning game is like right at the bottom of the list. And so, like, as I think we all know in this room, there's no such thing as an easy startup. And like, I would get up in the morning and I think like, why did I get into this? How do I get out of it? Like, I'm gonna like crash this company, and like it's not worth the pain, because like why the hell am I building a barcode scanning game? And so when we had a chance to sell the company to Groupon, kind of as an acqui-hire, I leapt at it. And it was like my escape fantasy. Investors, we went back and readjusted the liquidation preference so the investors would make some money. And then I got to go like one level up from barcode scanning game to internet coupon.
It's like Maslow, right? You're very far away from self-actualization.
And so I kind of like invested at Groupon for a couple years, and I was like, I want to do another startup, but this time I want to do one where I'll never ask, is it worth it? And so it'd been in the back of my head, what the hell happened to Supersonic Flight? And I think I had a thing on my to-do list called figure out how to start an aviation company. It just sat on my to-do list. I never did anything with it. And so eventually I fired myself from Groupon, and I wanted to work on the most exciting thing that wasn't impossible. And so I took a deep breath and, okay, I'm going to look at this Supersonic Flight thing, and I'm probably going to get 2 weeks into it, and I will understand for myself why it is a bad idea that no one is doing, and then I will never have to worry about being like 80 and wonder what if I tried.
Yeah.
So at any rate, it really took two weeks to figure out the elevator pitch that's still the elevator pitch for Boom. If you speed flights up, you don't need a flat bed like we have in business class today. You can have a nice size seat on an airplane that's twice as fast. And in order to make that a very large market at a price point that's similar to what people pay in business class today, you only need to be at Concorde 50-year-old technology by a few percent. And I remember I found that out, which, by the way, that's a 3-line spreadsheet where all the data you need to know that is in Wikipedia. Like anybody with a brain and a spreadsheet and a web browser can figure that out. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. And that 3-line spreadsheet is now, fast forward many years, there's a very, very sophisticated market model. There's a very, very sophisticated airplane design, and it still has the same answer.
Yeah, I think Supersonic is now back in vogue, which is amazing. And I think that the two, you've talked about in the past, he has this great phrase about killing the on-ramp to innovation. And that really what's gotten in the way of supersonic travel were two major things, which is safety and the economic model, right? And so yes, it's a fraction of a percentage to change that, but how are you doing that at Boom? Specifically around those two things.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll tell a little bit of a bigger story around it, which I think is really about the birth, the death, and hopefully the rebirth of entrepreneurship in an industry. And there was a golden age of aviation in really from 1903, when the Wright brothers flew, through to about 1921, where all the companies that are the greats of the greats of aviation got created. Boeing, Lockheed, Douglas, and in fact, Douglas was the last one in 1921. And so Boom is the first new commercial aircraft company founded by an entrepreneur since 1921. And so what happened was, for the first 50 years of flight, like, we just had incredible progress. And I think that was very much about founders pushing, the flight envelope. And we were getting faster and faster and faster, and that continued really through the 1960s. And in fact, the introduction of the first jetliner coincides with the retirement of the last founder.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And that was de Havilland, who was still running de Havilland in the UK. They created the de Havilland Comet, and that was not the first successful jetliner, but it was the first jetliner. And by the way, that speed of that first one is still the speed that we fly at today. Wow. So what happened is the founders retired, and then the people who had worked with the founders took over, and they continued to basically be in optimization mode. And if you look at Boeing's first jetliner versus the jetliner today, their latest jetliner, like, unless you're an aerospace engineer, it's hard to tell the difference. And they've gotten more efficient, they've gotten safer, but it's a tube and wing airplane that flies at about the same speed. It does the same job. And then things got worse, because then the people who kind of worked with or were inspired by the founders retired, and then the bean counters took over. My apologies to any accountants in the audience. Unless you worked at Boeing, you're not responsible. And then we quit even optimizing, really. Like, it's been 20 years since Boeing built an all-new jetliner. So what about Supersonic? So in the 1960s, we went away from that commercially driven model of innovation where there were founders, and founders were very focused on product market fit. They didn't know that term back then, but all the successful airplanes had product market fit. And then we went to this national prestige Cold War era model, and we did Apollo, and we did Concorde. And both were 1969, landed on the moon, flew twice the speed of sound, and guess what? If you want to land on the moon or fly supersonic, can't do it anymore. Yeah. And conventional wisdom is that both of those were massive beacons of progress. I think the opposite is true. I think Apollo killed spaceflight, and I think Concorde killed supersonic. Wow. And the reason is that it was done with no thought to economics. I mean, and so what we did in Concorde is we built a 100-seat airplane with a $20,000 ticket. And by the way, 100 uncomfortable seats. They look like they got plucked out of the back of a Southwest jet.
And you said the windows were the size of an iPhone. You couldn't even really look outside.
Yeah, look outside. The size. It was a cool view, but not, But yeah, so Concorde had no product market fit because especially in 1970s, 1980s kind of travel demand, you can't find 100 people who want to drop 20 grand to go somewhere really fast. Mm-hmm. And then but then there was all the politics around it, and this goes back to the genesis of your question. The Concorde was a joint venture with the French and British governments. I mean, usually when there's a French and British joint venture, it's like a war. So it's remarkable this thing ever flew. And then there was an American kind of government-led competitor called the SST. The FAA was speccing it out. Boeing was building it. And it was going to be, instead of Mach 2, 100 seats, it was going to be Mach 3, 300 seats. So the economic crater on this thing was even worse. And so it got canceled, which was basically a good thing because it didn't make any sense. But then we're in this world where Concorde is coming, hasn't really come yet. The American competitor is canceled. No one's really figured out how economically DOA this is. And so we did the worst thing. We banned supersonic flight over land in the US. Literally, we put a speed limit in place. And ostensibly, that is about sonic boom. But if you were really worried about sonic boom...
About noise?
Yeah,
noise.
Theoretically it's about noise. But I think if it was actually about noise, we would have had a noise limit.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
So the punchline out of all of this is, I think we know in this room how new technology comes to market. It starts at a high price point for a small number of people, and then we scale and we optimize, and the price point comes down, and the market gets bigger. That's the story of cell phones, computers, electric cars, everything, right? And so supersonic flight should have started with a supersonic private jet. Small, right. Easy to make quiet for the ultra wealthy at a high price point, but the vast majority of private jet miles are flown over land. So if you can't fly supersonic over land, there's no market for a supersonic private jet. Guess what? We just banned the MVP. Yeah. And so the crazy thing we're doing at Boom is basically taking 787 level technology and going straight from what should have been 1.0 and building 2.0. Wow.
So let's talk a little bit. Well, I have so many questions. So let me just pause. Anybody have a question in the audience? Okay. We'll go to you. Can you yell? Do you have a loud voice? Because if not, then I'm going to pass over you. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. I'm kidding. Go ahead. Oh, right here, I think. I saw this one first. Oh, okay. All right. Oh.
Do you find that, so if you look at SpaceX, you look at Blue Origin, you're kind of, in a way, doing something similar. So if you look at SpaceX, you look at Blue Origin, they're both, in a way, kind of doing something similar to what you're doing. But they were not the first startups that those entrepreneurs pursued. They used tons of money that they had from previous exits to fund something that probably should have had a lot more support and venture behind it. Do you find at Boom that you are facing the same kind of challenge? Do you feel like there's a really strong infrastructure to help the company grow?
At some point, my career plan was become an internet billionaire and then use the money to start an airplane company. And that didn't happen. And I actually think it was a good thing. If you look at the examples of Blue Origin and SpaceX are really interesting. Elon had some money, but he didn't have enough money to fund SpaceX. He had enough money to start SpaceX. And so he had to figure out how to have it pitch. And I think that kept SpaceX focused. It kept him hungry. And then, I have a lot of respect for Bezos, but Blue's got a sugar daddy. And I think that's actually much harder. And the requirement of getting out there and raising capital is a forcing function for getting really clear on the story, getting really clear on the risk, and burning the risk down. And I think SpaceX had to do that. We've had to do that at Boom, and it's made us stronger than we'd otherwise be.
That's great. That's great. Question over here.
So I got my first question answered by ChatGPT, actually. It led me to a second question. So the question was, if you approach the sound barrier slowly, does that change the volume of
The boom.
the boom, right? And it said that it doesn't really. It's more about altitude and the size of the aircraft. Can you explain why that happens? What the physics is behind it?
How long do we have? No, this is fun. Sonic boom physics are really cool. The best metaphor is it's like the wake of a boat. And so when a boat goes through water, it leaves a wake, and the bigger of the boat, the bigger the wake. The closer the boat you are, the more of the wake you feel. And by the way, anytime the boat's going above a certain speed, it's going to make a wake. But it does that continuously. So from the aspect of any one observer, the boat goes by, at some point the wake hits you, but if the wake's further away, it's less of a wake. Make a long, skinny boat, it's probably going to have less of a wake. I'm not a boat guy, but I just tapped up my boat knowledge. I could go deeper on sonic boom physics, but that's the essence of it.
Another question here.
Can you talk at all about Boom's deal with United and what you guys have potentially coming down in the next few years with that, how that's going?
Well, and just before you answer that, I mean, just to put a point on that, I mean, this is what is so exciting about this, because this isn't science fiction. This is this company that basically, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but you have the next 5 years booked in orders from United, American, and Japan Air, right? So this is happening, and it's super exciting. So talk about that, because I think it's hitting the market, and it is hitting the market with a boom. No pun intended.
Yeah,
I think it's really awesome. I've been watching a lot of aerospace startups and you guys for
They're doing it.
years, but you guys have the orders, you guys have the customers, and United's going along with Archer, so please, thank you.
Yeah. So let me set a little bit of context, and I'll try to hit that squarely. The product we're building is called Overture, and it is an all business class supersonic airliner. So I think 64 seats, like really nice seats, not like Concorde seats.
What about United seats?
Oh, there's a fun story there. I'll come back to that. So 64 nice seats. And it's aimed at routes that are ones that are primarily over water, because we can go twice as fast over water, and we can go 20% faster over land. And unlike Concorde, that wasn't very good at doing those hybrid routes, we've designed Overture to be good at hybrid routes. And so that means, well, the bread and butter is going to be like New York to London, and Washington to Paris, and Miami to Madrid, and Seattle to Tokyo. We can also do routes like Chicago, Frankfurt. And it's a little bit less percentage speed up, because you've got some coefficient times the 20% speed up and some coefficient times the 2 times speed up. So that's what the product is, and it's made out of like 787 level technology, and it meets all the regulations that currently exist. We don't need any new regulations. We don't need any unobtainium, and so it's like a pragmatic thing. And so to go to United. United is lucky to have, I think, the most visionary CEO in the airline industry, and Scott Kirby. I've been very, very, very impressed with Scott's leadership. And so COVID hits, and like the majority of airlines hunker down, and Scott says it's time to get ready for the future.
Yeah.
And so we'd had a kind of a little bit of a dialogue with some people at United, and then after the pandemic hit, the dialogue went up, and we found. Basically found a way to do a deal where United was willing to put a deposit down on 15 airplanes and then have pre-orders on another 35, so kind of up to 50. And ironically, we did the entire deal over Zoom. And we met the day we announced it, which is a little insane.
That is insane. Because these aren't cheap. I mean, as much as you've adjusted the economic model, they're still pretty pricey.
We sell them for $200 million a copy. We've never discounted the airplane. Everyone's paying list price, and it's very profitable at that price. Arguably, we've actually underpriced it. Because it's like, somebody asked me on Twitter once, sure. Are you ever going to have a buy one, get one free? and
That's when you know you have a pricing problem.
Right? Well, the answer is every Overture is a buy one, get one free. but because it flies twice as fast. No, I'm serious.
Exactly.
No, this is part of the economic model. You can do twice the flights with the same airplane and crew.
I mean, you said that, so when Seattle to Tokyo, less than 5 hours, you estimate for every transcontinental flight that people save about 2 days of time.
Yeah, so
That's incredible. I mean, it's the one resource we can't ever replenish is time, right? And so you think about the impact of that on humanity.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to underappreciate, especially like, oh, we got Wi-Fi, like, is this like one less movie? Does it really matter? But the time savings in the air multiply on the ground. So let's say has anyone ever gone to Tokyo for a Monday morning meeting? Okay, my condolences.
Yeah.
So
Super painful.
in doing the deal with Japan Airlines, a number of times I went to Tokyo for one meeting. And the way it works is you leave the U.S. midday Saturday, you get there 12 hours later, it's end of day Sunday, go to a hotel room, try to sleep, our alarm goes off the next morning, go to your meeting, try not to sleep. And then the best case scenario is you get the next flight back and it's taken 3 calendar days, and you better not make any important decisions the rest of the week because the jet lag has, it's just messed you up. And the way it works Supersonic is you can actually leave a whole day later. So say out of San Francisco at 8 a.m. Sunday morning departure, gets to Tokyo 6 hours later. So it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon to our bodies. It's 8 a.m. Monday morning in Tokyo. Mm-hmm. They're awake, we're awake, do our meeting, overnight flight back. We're back in the U.S. 24 hours after we left, and there's no jet lag because we never had to change time zones.
Incredible.
That's supersonic.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, seriously, right? That's incredible. So we're here at Denver Startup Week. We have a ton of incredible inventors and makers of companies and technologies. You've been incredibly successful, but to your own admission, you didn't have this on your resume, right? And so how did you find that courage to go and do something as bold as this, knowing that you didn't have the pedigree? And then I think the second part of my question is, let's talk about setbacks, because that's a real thing in startups. And how do you deal with that both professionally and personally to keep that going, to keep your vision going despite that?
Yeah, so remind me if I forget part of that, because there's a couple of things in there I want to make sure I touch on all of it.
I'll help you. That's my job.
So especially when I talk to other founder CEOs that are later stage, a thing I often hear is just their stories of how much they learned from the moment of founding to the moment of success. And 99.99999% of what you need to be a successful founder CEO on the IPO is not stuff you knew at the moment of founding. And there is an enormous amount of learning involved. There's an enormous amount of self-reinvention involved in any business. And a thing I've come to believe is that in order to be successful as a founder CEO, you have to be willing to reinvent yourself. You have to be willing to learn. And knowledge and skills, especially if you're driven and motivated, are variable. You can learn. I think people underestimate what they can learn. What's much harder to change is what we love. And so I think there's a Moneyball kind of opportunity here where you're going to have to learn a lot anyway. So go after the thing you love, even if you don't know a darn thing about it. 'Cause you're going to learn a lot anyway. Why not learn it? And I spent a year studying aerospace, took an airplane design class, took a remedial calculus and physics class that I hadn't had any since high school. And it took a year kind of for me to get enough knowledge that I felt comfortable hiring the first. This is in and out a little bit, so I can hold it differently. But yeah, so my put there is work on what you love.
Yeah.
And then the second part of it was
just how you deal with setbacks, because that's a natural part of things. And, especially in such a high stakes industry that you're in, everyone's watching you, and a mistake in your environment could be pretty costly and devastating to the dream.
Yeah, I mean, and that last part, one of the things that was very different for me going from software to hardware, and particularly into aerospace, and a thing that we did that was way harder than I ever knew it would be, is unlike SpaceX or Blue Origin, our very first vehicle has a human on it. And a human we like.
Exactly.
And so the safety bar is very, very high, and achieving that is way harder than I thought it would be. But the setbacks, I got a lot of experience with setbacks. Like the number of times something doesn't go right, the number of near-death experiences we've had as a company, like I could tell stories forever. And I've come to believe, it was actually something I, in a way, anticipated on day one. I was like, I was, when I was sitting there trying to decide whether to start the company, and I was like, this is like, I'm gonna go tell my friends I'm building supersonic jets. Like, I know they're all gonna roll their eyes and like wonder when I'm gonna get my sense back.
Exactly.
But
they may pay for dinner, so it could have been a benefit, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember being told, like, call me back when you got something less pie at the sky, dude. And then, like, literally one friend told me to go for it. And I years later, I called him back. I was like, man, you really helped. You gave me some encouragement. And he's like, dude, I thought you were crazy. I just could tell how excited you were. So I think this goes back to why it's important to work on something that we love.
Yeah.
Is like, there are shitty days at Boom. But there are not days that I think I wish I'd never tried. And even days where I'm looking at a problem and I'm like, there it could be. There it is, right there. That's the thing that might kill us.
Wow.
And, we've had a bunch of those. And I never think, I think, oh, shit. But I don't think, I wish I hadn't tried. And I would much, much, much rather, even from where we are today, like die trying than never have tried. And at this point, like Boom's well enough known that like if we screw this up, like it'll be a famous failure. But that's okay. It's still worth it.
That's amazing.
And so I think it's that like belief in cause that for me gets me up every day, whether it's a day where we get to go see the airplane fly or the day where I'm afraid it never will. And I find that what I didn't realize on day one that is now clear is I got lucky that what inspires me inspires other people too. And we built the team at Boom out of people who really believed in what we'd set out to do, and the mission of making the world more accessible through flights that are faster, but also affordable, convenient, safe, and sustainable. And that's a thing that great people want to be part of. And so I was able to build a team that otherwise I wouldn't be able to do. And if I think about all the mistakes I've made as a leader and all the just dumb stuff done on and off, and I can't believe the team stuck around. And the team stuck around, they loved the mission. And they were willing to put up with all of our mistakes because they so wanted it to work. And so that like cause, that belief in cause is what creates, I think, the resilience. And now that we sort of formalized a bit more what our culture is, and we defined our values, like be resilient is one of our 5 core values. It's like we're not done with setbacks. There are going to be more. Yeah. And what matters is, sometimes we call it Project Lemonade. Like when life hands us lemons, let's go make lemonade. And I'm amazed at how often that actually happens. I could tell stories about like how we got to the best possible plan through the failure of our baseline plan.
Wow, that's incredible. Questions from the audience? Okay, go ahead right here, and then we'll do you, and then you.
Can you tell us about raising your first round?
The question is, can you tell us about raising your first round, in case you didn't hear that?
Yeah, so if I didn't have a little bit of the Groupon money to seed the company, I don't think we ever could have gotten anywhere. I got us to 7 or 8, 9, something like that employees before I was like, I'm going to bankrupt my family if I don't raise a round. And the company at this point was like in my basement in Cherry Creek. And there were some people who'd invested in my first company who had said like, we love how you handled that. We'll invest in anything you ever do. And I thought, yay, I'll call them. And then some of them were like, I didn't think you'd say Supersonic Jet. So, but about half the people who actually made money in my first company invested in Boom. And I was like, would you just reinvest your proceeds? That's all I'm asking you to do. And then there were a handful of other people I found that were in the network that basically said, I think you're probably crazy, but I really, really want this to work. Here's 25 grand. And we cobbled together, I think it was a $770,000 seed round. which turned out to be like within $5,000 of the same number of the seed round of my first company. I don't know why. Yeah, that was the seed round, and then we did Y Combinator, and then there's more after that.
That's incredible. All right, I think you, yeah.
For a passenger on one of your jets, I assume that when you get to that speed, you'd hear a big boom. But when you're using the boat analogy, maybe that's not how it works. What's it like for the passenger?
You're exactly right with the boat analogy. That you don't notice it on board the airplane. And I have actually now flown supersonic aboard one of our the fighter trainer that we use for practice flights, and I can assure you it is uneventful. And the eventful thing in that flight was after breaking the sound barrier, we did 2 barrel rolls, 3 aileron rolls, 2 loops. And then our test pilot said, "We got more gas. What else do you want to do?" And I said, land. Before I leave something that someone's going to have to clean up in this airplane. But yeah, no, it'll be quiet on board the airplane. The sonic boom that we hear on the ground, to go one notch deeper on the physics, is the constructive interference of shock waves. So every little bit of an airplane that's supersonic. So what it means to be supersonic is you're going faster than the speed of sound. What in the world does the speed of sound have to do with an airplane? That's the best question that nobody ever asked me. The speed of sound is the speed at which a pressure wave moves in air. And anytime an airplane is below the speed of sound, it is nudging the air in front of it. And then there is a pressure wave that propagates in front of the airplane at the speed of sound, which is faster than the airplane. And you can think of that as that pressure wave is like telling the air in front of the airplane, something's coming, start getting out of the way. And so by the time the nose of the airplane bumps into the air molecules, they've kind of already started to move out of the way. And when you're going supersonic, you're now outrunning the pressure wave. And what that means is the nose of the airplane is like crashing right into these air molecules, and it compresses them. And so when you're supersonic, you're compressing air. And every part of the airplane that's supersonic relative to the local airflow is creating a little band of compressed air. Those bands of compressed air, that's what's called shock waves. And when those shock waves stack up on top of each other, constructive interference, like you can remember from high school physics, they stack up, and that becomes what we hear on the ground as a sonic boom. But you don't hear it inside the airplane. In fact, you don't even hear it near the airplane, because the constructive interference has to happen as the waves propagate toward the ground.
So interesting. Great question.
How loud is the boom? So it's just like wake of a boat. How big is the boat and how close are you?
It depends.
It depends, yeah, it depends. And so having been out in Mojave near Edwards Air Force Base, I've now heard a bunch of sonic booms, and the vast majority are no big deal.
It's like thunder, right? You've described it as thunder.
Like a bad one is like thunder.
Yeah.
Some of them, like when I went down to Mojave, I come back to Denver, and I kept thinking, ooh, sonic boom. No, it was somebody dropping something a couple offices over in the office, and it was just like a thump. And I'm like, okay, if we can handle somebody dropping something in an office building, we should be able to handle a sonic boom. Now some will get your attention. There's some that are like, we probably shouldn't do that, at least not during the daytime, But there was an episode of MythBusters many years ago. It was about, can you break a window with a sonic boom? And the answer is you can, but you got to fly supersonic like 50 feet over the ground and put the boom right in the middle of the window. And if we fly over to supersonic 50 feet over the ground, the window was not the problem that day.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think in time we'll find that there's a common sense noise limit. It won't be that hard to meet it. It won't be perfectly quiet, but guess what? Neither is the world we live in.
Okay, we have tons of questions. So over here, and then we'll get to you all over here. Okay, all right.
Perfect. I want to go back to the contracts real quick. One of the fallouts of signing on to contracts like these could be a handoff of responsibility. So I'm curious how you're viewing both the regulatory and even the social perspective of supersonic flight. Handling the elevator problem and stuff like that.
And also, can I just add something to that? So can the pilots, do they need special training? Like, do the United pilots need special training? So sorry, I kind of had to just hijack that for a bit.
Cool. Well, I'll start with that and keep me honest on what I'm forgetting. We are, it's not pleasant to think of it, but there is such a thing as a worst doctor, a worst lawyer, and a worst airline pilot. And we are designing Overture such that it'll be easy to fly, and it does not require a high school pilot. The XB1, we've got the guy flying XB1 tomorrow is a Top Gun graduate, but that's a test pilot doing new things in a new airplane for the first time. Yeah. Which is not Overture. We actually revealed the cockpit for Overture in July. If you go on our YouTube channel, you can find the reveal video. And it's one of the neat things was that the last pilot who flew Concorde became the first Concorde pilot to fly the Overture sim. And I don't think they'd flown in 20 years. And they're just very natural. And if you look at the cockpit, it's like going from a BlackBerry to an iPhone. We got rid of all the knobs and buttons and switches. We've got 4 big touch screens, and we've got a force feedback joystick, and it's really pretty natural to fly.
So I want to get to your other parts of your questions about handoff of the contract and regulatory and some of those things, what your fear is about that. By the way, we only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to do rapid fire where you're going to ask a question in 2 seconds, and then you're going to answer in 1 second. So contractual.
Boom.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Well, I think your point is that as you get engaged with these big companies like United and American, are you worried about the blowback of regulatory issues that might hit Boom, right? Is that kind of...
I can answer that.
Problem versus United. Yeah.
Oh, it's 100% our responsibility to build a safe airplane. 100% our responsibility. And it is, this is why we made XB1 a human piloted airplane. Safety culture is number 1. One thing I'll say on regulatory, we're not asking the regulators to do anything they haven't done before. And if you look back at the way Boeing did the 777 in the 1990s, that thing got approved by the FAA on the day they had promised it to United. And you do that, regulators are humans too. Involve them in the process, make them part of the team. Let them see what we're doing as we're doing it. We got this certification paperwork at XB1 on the day that we asked for it because we involved the regulator along the way. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, look what just is happening with Boeing, right? I mean, it's the manufacturer, right, that typically bears the brunt of it. Okay, quick question, quick answer.
Number one, there's probably a lot of things that you put aside by shrinking the planet. That's a great story to tell, but you're talking about regulation, and this is the question I have for you. How much are you going to see speed bumps, no matter how good the story is, on the regulatory front, country by country? And do you have a way to handle that in this? Are friends at the FAA going to support you in that, or NASA, or love to hear what that future looks like?
So far, we've never waited on the FAA. The FAA has only waited on us. I think if we do it right, that will be the ongoing story.
It's great. Question over there. You can stand up, then you, and then you. Thank you.
So is there still a speed limit?
There is still a speed limit, and for now we'll follow it. So what that means, though, is right under the speed of sound, over land, we're 20% faster than Boeing. Over water, we're 2 times faster. So, routes like Denver to Honolulu, we can still fly with a pretty big speed up, fly under the speed of sound, hit the coast, push the throttles forward, go even faster.
And it's 1.7 Mach, is that right?
1.7 times Mach over water, 0.94 over land.
Yeah. Okay.
Fuel agnostic, can run on Jet A, runs even better on sustainable fuel, runs on any blend in the middle.
Apologize for the interloper. Over here, one with the mic, and then we'll go back. Yeah.
So 2 quick questions. One, when you were feeling those moments of this is not going to fly, quite literally, right, in your mind, before your kind of mission around resiliency as a value, how did you keep the team motivated when you yourself were kind of questioning the overall, whether this is really going to go or not?
I try to be transparent, and I share with the team why I'm motivated and why I'm optimistic. And sometimes I find that the best thing to keep myself going is to give a pep talk to somebody else, which forces it to give it to myself. I had a tough board meeting a while ago, and the board was in a bad place, and I hadn't done a great, it was obvious in retrospect I hadn't done a great job of board management. And I gave the board a pep talk, and then discovered at the end of the board meeting that was what I needed to hear for myself.
That's great. Great answer. Right there, and then we'll go to you. We'll have to wrap it.
About, like, I guess, like, de-risking, like, a startup like this, where you're having to raise money and build it for, like, 10 years before you're ever really seeing, like, much, like, early revenue to speak of. I know you, like, kind of talked about pre-selling and stuff, like, what did that look like really early on?
Systematically de-risk the business. So the way I thought of it was, what are all the reasons we might fail? Oh, maybe passengers don't want it. Maybe airlines aren't going to buy it. Maybe the technology is not there to build out of. Maybe our engineering execution is not going to be there. Maybe the supply chain's not there. Maybe the regulators won't support it. That's about the list. So great. Let's go systematically prove that each of those things isn't the case. So we surveyed passengers. If it wasn't obvious, turns out 97% of passengers want to fly Supersonic. 3% clicked the wrong button. We got airlines to give us money. Sorry, I'm going fast, not leaving room for the laughter. We got airlines to give us money that wasn't refundable. That proves that airlines want the actual airplane we're building. We signed up the supply chain. The best of the best that build parts for Boeing and Airbus signed up to build our parts. We got the FAA to freeze the regulations that apply to the airplane so there's no future regulatory risk. By the way, that's normal. It's called a G1 certification basis. How do we prove our technology is there and the engineering can do it? We built an airplane and we flew it. And so, just how do we? The principle I got from that is, think about, probability of success equals probability of success on factor 1 times probability of success on factor 2 times probability of success on factor 3, right? Identify those factors and then prove in a way that is externally verifiable to an investor that those probability factors have gone up. So, so it's not about linearly progressing through it. It's about it's showing demonstrably higher odds of success along every factor that's required for success.
Love it. Last question before we wrap.
I'm honored. Firstly, that's one of the best explanations of compressibility I've ever heard. So that was brilliant.
I'm not an aerodynamicist, but I play one on TV.
It was great. I worked for Airbus a long time ago, and one of the things there was, in your entire career, you probably won't see a plane go from inception to production. Now, they would still take 15 plus years to develop an aircraft, and they had a whole basis to start from. How are you doing it, and what methods and tools are you using to rapidly speed up the process?
What you said is very true. With development cycles have gotten longer and longer. Long cycles beget long cycles for a bunch of different reasons, including the experience of people like yourself that never get to see the whole thing beginning to end. It's been 20 years since Boeing's done a new airplane program. Anybody had any experience in that is gone. And so short cycles beget short cycles. The shorter your development cycle, the less pressure there is to put too many features in it. The more you focus on how to speed up. And so, our goal is to continually shorten development cycles, and that means a whole bunch of things. It means rapid hardware prototyping. It means accepting test failures, planning for test failures. It means using digital engineering, and it means just driving to it, and having a product roadmap that is worth driving to. So, our goal after Overture, we're about 5 years from shipping the first Overture, and our goal after that is one new Overture every 5 years.
So, amazing. I think I probably speak for all of us. We could sit here and talk to Blake for a lot longer. First of all, I just want to thank you. And second of all, what do you need from us? What can we do to help you to continue to support you and this venture?
Keep cheering for us.
Yeah.
Like the moral support means a lot. And, but my biggest wish for the world is just more entrepreneurs building the thing that they really, really, really want to build. Like, if you really dig deep and you say, what would I create in the world if I wasn't worried about failure? Fuck it, go build that.
I love it. Round of applause for Blake.
We have to keep that going. As our last session on the Ignite stage, this could not have been any better.
Amazing.
Huge round of applause for Kristen and Blake. This was the most active and engaged session we've had over the course of the last 3 days, and thank you, thank you, thank you. I think everybody got a gift from that discussion. Blake, thank you for being so transparent. Kristen, incredible job navigating an incredible discussion. And I think we can all go home being super excited for Boom and knowing that they're here in Colorado. I think what Blake said, let's cheer them on. LinkedIn, push them out there. Let's cheer them. When you have a community party, when you go public, Blake, invite us all. We'll be there. We're really, really excited for this one. Thank you, most importantly, for attending Denver Startup Week. There's still content in the calendar tomorrow if you guys are around. There's a closing party tonight at Whiskey Row. We have a happy hour over at the Southwest Skyline Park Garden from 4 to 6. So make yourself happy and awesome throughout all the rest of Denver Startup Week. And let's just give one more huge round of applause as they step off the stage. This was absolutely awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Kristen, for having me. If I could say one more thing, if you want to follow along, best thing to do is follow me on X. I'm at Bscholl, BSCHOLL. Sometimes I live tweet our flight tests.
Just saying. Thanks, guys.